Hello there, students and families. It's Mr. Sargent here with your Day 36 recap video for ELA and for science. Now, in ELA today, we started with one of my favorite kind of books, and it's the Choose Your Adventure book. So we're going to discuss that real quick. I'm going to teach you how to do your assignment for tonight using, a new website that we're going to be using through Google Classroom. And then in science, we're going to focus on the experiment that I didn't get to do yesterday, as well as we're going to introduce heat today. So stay tuned. When I was in school, I never really liked reading that much, which is kind of funny now that I'm a reading teacher. Mainly because of these. I never liked wearing my glasses when I was younger. But the books that I did read, well, there are really only three. Book number one is, I always used to check out how to draw dinosaurs or how to draw cars. I used to love those books. There wasn't a lot of words to them, and I got to learn how to draw cars and dinosaurs. Not that it's helped me much out as an adult, but it was still a great book to check out at the library each week. The second book that I always picked out were the Guinness Book of World Records, mainly because I loved seeing the different pictures. I loved seeing how humans can set these records and do amazing things. That always interested me. The third kind of book that I used to always love was the Choose Your Own Adventure books. And if you've ever read a Choose Your Own Adventure book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Here is a chance for a story to take different twists and turns. You don't read it like a normal book. What you do is you read it and you go to the bottom of the page. So as you're reading, you see a certain problem. And then at the bottom it says, you can choose to go here or choose to go here. And it will tell you to go to a different page on each choice. And I used to love reading those books because every time I read the book, it was something different. And sometimes we want those different kind of stories. Well, our story today is sort of like that. It is called, the title of the book that we started today is called, You Can Encourage Others. Tease or inspire. Now what's great about here, you have two choices after every part of the story. You can either choose to do nothing and the story takes you down one path, or you can do something else that's helpful and the story will take you down another path. Choose your own adventure. One of the great things about this story is it changes every time you read it. So if we read the story and we chose to do nothing, one thing happened. Well, you can kind of guess what's going to happen when we do nothing, especially when we're dealing with bullying. But if we go to the encouraged side, we see an entirely different story. Now, what's great about this is you get to see both sides. You get to see what happens when you do help and what happens when you don't help. So I encourage you to read it on epic.com. You will love it. I've already assigned it to you if you're part of my Epic class. And I encourage all of you to choose both sides so you can see what happens when you do nothing or when you choose to do the right thing. After we read the first part of that story, we then switch gears to a review over yesterday's lesson on Cap Sub Pred Punk. I bet you can't see it 3 times fast. I know I can. I always mess up somewhere in the middle. But we reviewed what Cap Sub Pred Punk actually means. You know, we start off with every sentence having a capital letter. And then after that, every sentence is going to have a subject. And if you remember what the subject, it answers the question, who is the story about? Or who is the sentence about? And then we talked about the predicate. Now, if you remember what the predicate is, this is going to be the tricky part. So, when you think of predicate. When you think about predicate, you're thinking about the action or what the subject is actually doing. And then, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, every sentence has to finish off with a punctuation. Now, when we talk about our punctuation, we're talking about the period, the question mark, and the exclamation point. So a challenge I have for you, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Tomorrow's lesson, we're going to be talking about tone and how to read with the punctuations. So I want you to remember this. When we use a period, our reading sounds like this. When we use a question mark, our reading sounds like this. When we use an exclamation point, our reading sounds like this. Can you hear the differences in how I read each or said each phrase? Well, if you can, bring that information to class tomorrow because we're going to practice our reading. We're going to practice using that tone in how we read and make the stories a little bit more exciting thanks to the punctuation. So after our sentence review, we focused on your assignment today. Now, what I'm going to do right now is a step-by-step process of how to get to your assignment, how to do your assignment, and how to turn in your assignment. So step one is pretty easy. You just log into your email. Or if you know directly how to get to your Google Classroom, go right there. It's super simple. Now, if you notice, we're on the Google Classroom now, and you'll see that I've put up a couple assignments up there. At the top, I have two things in particular. One is for our science lesson today. That's not an assignment, that's just some great notes and a great slideshow that you can watch and study when we're learning about the different types of heat. The second assignment has the words teacher made in the assignment. Well, to get to it, go ahead and click on it. Now, after we've clicked on it, you'll notice that this pops up to log in with Google or whatever. Go ahead and click it. Go ahead and click that blue link that sends you directly to the assignment. Now, if you notice behind me, here is the assignment. You'll notice the happy little tiger right here. And what you're going to do is you're going to create 5 sentences. Now, it says 6, but we've already done the first one together. You're going to create 5 sentences using some of the words that are in the boxes here. Now, if you see the words in the box, you'll notice that there are some nouns, verbs, and nouns. So your sentence is going to start with a noun. Well, that's going to be our who. Well, that's going to be our subject, isn't it? Now, remember, you're always going to start that subject with a capital letter. Then we have our predicate. This is where we use our verb. So our subject has to be doing something. And then we end it with another noun. Well, what does it really end with? Or should I say, what does it really end with? What does it really end with? What does it end with? Well, it's going to end with a punctuation, isn't it? All right? So to type in your answers, what you're going to do is you're going to click the big T that you see right here. Then you're going to scroll down to whatever number you're on, and you're going to type in your answers. All right? You can notice we've already done one for you. If you see, there's the capital letter, there's our subject, there's our predicate, and there's our punctuation. Now, what you're going to do is for every problem, you're going to have to go back to that big T just to type. All right? And you're going to go ahead and type in the sentences that you create. Now, let's say that you can't figure it out or you can't get on your own Chromebook. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to write these sentences in your journal, I'm all for it. Write them in your journal, take a picture of it, send it to Class Dojo. I cannot wait to see your writing because I want to see if you're practicing the, what is it again? Oh yeah, cap sub pred punk. Now, once you've finished, you notice at the top, you'll see turn in or I'm done. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you go ahead and click that and you are all set. All right. So I look forward to seeing the work that you're going to be doing tonight. If you run into any problems, you can always go back to your journal or go back to this video and go step-by-step process on how to do this. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to see you guys and ladies creating some incredible sentences. I look forward to reading them. In science, well, first I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Yesterday we did an experiment on light energy. Now, what you're going to see behind me is some of the experiments that we have done. Now, as I'm showing you some of these videos, I want you to notice if you can see any of the 3 terms that we focused on yesterday in class. Well, if you remember those 3 terms, we have reflection, we have refraction, and we have absorb. Now, with these three words, we are able to understand how light can be bent, how light can disappear, and how it can create color. Now you'll notice that I am just flashing a flashlight at the background screen. Now the background screen has, one side has black construction paper, the other side has white construction paper. If we're talking about absorbing, the black side is going to absorb all of the light energy, whereas the white side is going to reflect it. Now, in fact, the light is so powerful, if we go behind the divider here, we're gonna see that the light actually shines through on the white side, but on the black construction paper, it doesn't. Why? Well, absorption. As the light hits the black construction paper, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to absorb all that light energy. So nothing's gonna be able to be seen through it. And finally, we have reflection. Now, if you look behind me, you'll notice I am flashing the flashlight at a mirror. Now, what's happening is the light is bending or reflecting off the mirror, but it's going through the water. So it's going to change a little bit. The water acts as sort of a prism. And if you see right there, you can see behind me, it does create a rainbow. We have the rainbow effect there because as it passes through the water, ladies and gentlemen, you are able to break down all the colors and it acts as sort of a prism. Now, with this prism, we're able to see all the colors. And if you notice, you can actually see all of the colors behind me with this reflection. Now, it won't work if you just flash the flashlight at the screen because we already know that's just the white light. But to get the rainbow effect, you're going to need that sort of prism. In this case, we used a bowl full of water. And look at it now. Pretty cool, huh? So that's the information from yesterday. Now, today we talked about, well, what's the next step after light? We talked about heat. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a pretty tasty experiment dealing with heat. But before we do that, I want you to be familiarized with the three ways that heat energy can move from one thing to another. Before we get into the different kinds of heat energy, it's important to know what heat actually is. Now, if I asked you, what do you think heat is? You may say something like something that makes you hot, or a fire, or the sun, or we had someone say the air conditioner earlier, which was actually a really good answer. It actually takes the heat away. But there's a couple things that you need to know about heat before we talk about the three different kinds of ways that it can actually move from one thing to another. First of all, remember, our definition of energy, it can't be created, it can't be destroyed. We can only change it into something else. And heat energy is no different. We can't create it, we can't destroy it, we can only change it from one thing to another. All right? So when you think of heat energy, you need to remember this. Heat energy travels from a hot surface to a cold surface. That's easy enough. That goes without saying. But for heat to travel, it has to go from a hot thing to a cold thing. That's important to remember. So the first example of heat transfer is radiation. Now, you may think of radiation as a bad thing. Often when I read comic books, you hear the word radiation in those comic books, and this is how things changed, and the Hulk changed from Bruce Banner to the Hulk. Listen, we get the majority of our heat on Earth through radiation. If you look up in the sky right now, don't look directly at it, but if you look up in the sky right now, if it's daytime, you will see the biggest source of radiant energy ever, and that is the sun. The sun gives off light waves that give off heat as well. Our entire Earth is heated by the sun, which is pretty cool that it does that. Now, The important thing to know about radiation and radiant energy is that it travels in a straight line, just like light. For you to obtain that heat from the sun, you need to be, well, out in it. So this is why when you're outside playing and you're in the direct sunlight, you get hot. And when you want to cool down, you go into the shade when you're away from the sun. Because the minute that you're out of the direct line of the radiant energy, well, you don't feel the heat as much. It's a pretty cool thing. Next, we have conduction. Now, in order for heat to be transferred through conduction, there's one word you need to remember: touching. In order for the hot to transfer its energy to the cold, it has got to be in direct contact. It's got to be touching the thing. Now, for me, this is where I run into a problem a lot because I love to cook. As you guys know, I love to cook. And to cook, you got to use the stove. Well, sometimes I'm not paying attention and I'll touch the wrong part of the stove. Well, guess what's going to happen? Well, once again, just like our light bulb from last week and just like our water balloon, it cannot handle the gravitational energy. Well, my hand can't handle the heat energy from the stove. So what happens? Well, I end up getting burned. And being burned is not fun, ladies and gentlemen. So to be safe, you guys and ladies need to stay away from anything that is going to give you way too much heat energy, because we don't want you to get burned. And finally, we have convection. Now, convection, two words you need to remember: water, air. Whenever air or water is heated up, or we transfer heat through water or air, it is going to be convection. Think about this. How do we cook our noodles every day? Well, we use hot water, don't we? That hot water, well, with a little bit of conduction involved too, it touches the noodles and it makes them so nice and tasty and delicious. But those noodles wouldn't heat up and they wouldn't turn into noodles without the convection, without that hot water. Now, I want you to think about the water cycle. Would we have any bit of the water cycle if we didn't have convection? Well, no, because the water cycle deals with both heating up water, cooling it down, but also it deals with the air as well. So when we think about convection, think about this. Does your food, when you bake something, ever touch the coil that it's heating up? It doesn't, does it? What happens in an oven is this. You turn on the oven and it heats up the air. We're able to cook with hot air, which is pretty cool. I want to end class today with a challenge. Now, I want you to imagine that you have your favorite cup or glass. Mine's Star Wars, of course. And I want you to imagine that you putting in your favorite drink, whether it's a soda, whether it's water, whether it's juice. For me, it's absolutely iced tea. And then I want you to imagine putting in ice into your drink. Well, I just happen to have done that. So the question I have is, why does that taste so good? No, that's not my question. My question is this. In that cup right now, is the ice cooling down the drink, or is the drink heating up the ice? I'd love to hear your answers. So come tomorrow prepared to answer that question, ladies and gentlemen. Is the drink heating up the ice, or is the ice cooling down the drink? I look forward to hearing your answers tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, you did a great job today, and I hope you have an incredible afternoon and night.